Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Derek's Travel Chats for February the 18th, 2021. I'm Derek Winsor, your host and owner of E&B Travel Services, right here in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador, Canada. Derek's Travel Chats has been developed to provide the traveler with information about travel both during and after this pandemic. And we know we are presently staying at home due to lockdowns by the public health, and travel is not something that's in our plans for the very near future. However, I know we like to dream, and someday soon we'll be past this pandemic and getting back to exploring the world. So if you have any questions about our session today, please just leave them in the comments section, and we'll answer them a little later. Today, we'll be chatting about the women and men who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, and in particular at Normandy, France during D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. In 2019, we saw the 75th anniversary take place, and now we're beginning to make plans for Canadians to be on the beaches of Normandy in June of 2024 for the 80th anniversary. And my guest today is the Operation and Outreach Manager for the Juno Beach Center, Mr. Alec Black. Mr. Black is located at the Juno Beach office in Burlington, Ontario, and he joins me here today. So welcome, Mr. Black, to the show, and we look forward to hearing about what visitors will see at Juno Beach and the Juno Beach Center.
Well, thank you very much for having me on today, Derek.
You're welcome. I know the pandemic has thrown a loop into a lot of people's plans for travel, and particularly places to visit, and I'm sure your center is seeing the downturn of that travel. So how are you dealing, and how is the center dealing with the impact of the pandemic?
Well, thank you for asking. It's been a very difficult, well, it's almost been a year now, I guess, a year minus a month maybe since the pandemic began. We had a very successful year in 2019 for the 75th anniversary. For the first time, the museum had over 100,000 visitors, which is, really outstanding for a museum that was originally built with, maybe 60,000 visitors in mind. And so for 2020, usually in the year after a major D-Day anniversary, we also have other anniversaries to look forward to, like the anniversary of victory in Europe, which we, celebrated from home this past spring. And usually in a non-pandemic year, that bodes quite well for attendance at the museum. And we had projected about 90,000 visitors for 2020. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, a number of things happened. One is the museum was essentially fully closed between mid-March and June 5th of 2020. We were very happy and very just relieved that we were able to be open on June 6th for the 76th anniversary of D-Day. And the museum stayed open over the summer with certain limitations in place, limits on the number of people who could be in the museum at any one time, limits on the size of guided tour groups, limits on we had a lot of some items from the museum were removed, the touch features, that sort of thing, and surfaces were regularly wiped down, that sort of thing. So at the end of the summer and into the fall, in November, the museum had to be closed once again because France went back into a lockdown situation, which essentially continues until now. And as a result, we actually had a reasonably strong summer considering the circumstances. We ended up with about 30,000 visitors for the year. And that had a big impact on both revenues from ticket sales, because the museum relies on revenues from ticket sales, and revenues in the gift shop as well. So very difficult year in 2020. Over here in Canada, our work at the Juno Beach Centre Association, we're the charity that owns and operates the museum. We had to pivot big time to do some additional fundraising to try to cover those gaps. And so we've actually secured since then, earlier this year, Veterans Affairs Canada announced that there was some additional funding coming our way to support us through the COVID pandemic. We also did, you may have seen them, a series of Remembrance Day virtual races, and we were able to raise approximately $80,000 through that program as well. And so those were some of the things we did to attempt to alleviate the effect of the pandemic on us. Other things include, for instance, like our guide program. Some of the guides who were, we have Canadian guides over there. It's a very important part of the legacy that was left to us by our veteran founders, that we have Canadian guides to greet people, and people can have a Canadian greeting when they attend the Juno Beach Centre. And so we had to scale back that program for last year and for this year. The guides that were already on site, some of them were able to return to Canada immediately because their terms were almost up. Others actually waited it out for us and came out when the place opened again. But in the fall, when things started to close down once more, the rest of them were essentially sent home. So it's been a difficult situation with regards to the guides as well, and we can't wait for the day where we're able to welcome them back so that they can welcome our visitors. Most of our visitors last year, there was a couple of Canadians, people who live over in Europe were able to make the journey, but mainly our visitors were local French people and French from even the Paris area. There seems to be, over the summer, there was a lot of people trying to get out of the cities and go to the country and try to enjoy themselves as best they could. We also had a lot of visitors from the Low Countries, Belgium and the Netherlands. And so it's really great. We actually have a Dutch language capability at the museum in addition to French and English. And so that really paid off for us as well, because those people were able to, they could do a weekend type trip to Normandy and make a family trip of it when things opened up a little bit over the summer in Europe. So a number of ways we've been kind of coping and managing the pandemic there.
I know one thing, when I've been there at the center a number of times now, and the thing that really speaks to me is Canada House. And I know you got a little video that you'll show shortly, but when you visit Canada House and you see that building that was first liberated by the Canadians, and we didn't get to meet the gentleman who owned it at the time, and I think he's since passed away, and his son now owns it. But just being able to, stand there in front of that house as a Canadian, as a Newfoundlander, and as it just brings back a whole lot of emotion for people. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the most famous Canadian photographs and footage from D-Day actually features that house. It's a fairly prominent house, in Bernier-sur-Mer along the coast. And it's a beautiful thing that the owners of that house, I believe it's their summer home. I believe they live in Caen, the major city nearby, most of the year. And then obviously they come out in the warmer months to the coast. It's amazing what they've done to try to preserve the memories, of those who landed there and liberated that house. And that's a general important point about the legacy of the Juno Beach Centre and memory in Normandy more generally, is the veteran who founded the center, Garth Webb, and his team. One of the things they had to do early on was find people like the Hoffers who owned Canada House, because it's really important for memory in a far distant land. I mean, France isn't, it's not quite China or anything like that, but it's other side of the world. You have to have local connections. And that's an important theme that the Juno Beach Centre tries to emphasize. So our staff over in France is about 50-50 French and then Canadian. So we have some staff who come over from Canada, but we also have a core staff of French, native French individuals. And that's a really important component. Our director at the museum, Natalie Worthington, she's actually married to, I believe, a Brit. her parents, I believe, were liberated by Canadian troops. They lived in the Caen area. And so, really forging this relationship is a really important part of what we do. There's gratitude, as you opened with, we have gratitude in Canada for what our soldiers did for us, in making sure we had a better world to live in that was free of Nazi tyranny. But, it's even almost as, it's probably more important in a sense for those who, in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, who literally lost their freedom during the war because the Nazis occupied their countries. Sure. And so that's a really important part of what we offer and what we do, is to bridge those two types of gratitude, to bring together the liberated and the liberators, to celebrate and commemorate what happened, 75 or more years ago now.
Yeah, even I've done a number of trips to the Beaumont Hamel site, and particularly when you're down in that small community next to the Beaumont Hamel Park, for instance, and as soon as people know that you're Canadian, and they know, and if you're Newfoundlander, even more so, they're just there to do whatever they can do to make your trip more enjoyable, help you find whatever you need to find, and so on. So yeah, it's a wonderful feeling when you meet the individuals from France and understand that they understand the sacrifices that Canadians and others made for their freedom, and how appreciative they are. So before we get into some more, if you want to put up that video, and people can get a chance to see and hear what Juno Beach Center is all about.
All right, I've got it here ready to go. I'll hit play and let me know if you can hear it. I think I've hit the right buttons, but...
Excellent.
There we go, I'm back.
And that's just a taste of what people will, get to experience and see when they're over there. Because, just walking the grounds alone is very emotional, and we're really bringing a lot out to people to understand the conditions that these men were under on that particular day, trying to take that beach.
Absolutely. And Juno Park is really a highlight of any visit, I think, to the Juno Beach Center. I mean, you get the education center aspect when you go through the museum. And by the way, The museum tells the story, because it's not just meant for a Canadian audience, it's meant for a European audience in a lot of respects. And so it tells the entire story of Canada's Second World War experience, with a particular focus on D-Day for sure, in some of the videos, for instance, that you get to watch when you go to the museum. And we're very much trying to help facilitate, an emotional experience, especially for Canadians who visit. And it doesn't really take much to do that, to be honest. You get a real sense of what went on, and then you go and you get to go walk the beach, and you really walk in their footsteps and get a good understanding for what happened and what they went through that day. I mean, for all of the artillery support, from offshore bombardment from the Air Force, the Navy, everything that was done to attempt to make their lives, the assault troops' lives more easy. A lot of it came down to, just those troops and dealing with, German positions and German strong points that for the most part went untouched by the bombardment. And so, Canada took quite heavy casualties on D-Day. Juno Beach is kind of the second worst beach in terms of overall casualties. A lot of people point to the fact that if you actually take a ratio and you say, out of the troops engaged, Omaha is the worst beach overall, the American beach further to the west. But out of troops engaged, the proportion of those who became casualties on Juno was actually a little bit higher than Omaha Beach. And so it was an incredible effort the Canadians put in to take that beach. And, as is often said, the Canadian troops that day advanced further inland than any of their, allied partners, which is incredible. They didn't achieve all of their objectives quite that they set out to do, but they got to their intermediate objectives. And at the end of the day, they were able to hold a position inland that ensured that the German counterattacks that came through a couple of days later did not succeed. And that's probably the most important point, because the Allies, while they brought a whole lot of firepower and manpower to bear, it really turned into a battle of logistics, a logistical buildup, right? The Germans have the interior lines. They have a European rail network to rely on. Hopefully the Air Force has done a good job of pulverizing that. But nevertheless, the Canadians, the Americans, the British, et cetera, they all have to come across the English Channel. And so it's really a battle of buildup. And the Germans' really only hope after the D-Day landing succeeds is to come in with a big counterattack early on to try to wipe the bridgehead out. And they're not able to do that.
No.
And a large reason for that is because of the work the Canadians did.
Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago when we had our group go over for the 75th anniversary, the night before we were actually down in the community of Con, doing our visit down there. And so we were leaving to go back to the hotel where we were staying. It was about an hour's drive away from there, and we had a young fella on the coach with us who had to go use the washroom. So we were 10, 15 minutes delayed leaving Con from when we were supposed to leave, and it was the best 10-minute delay we've ever had, because as we were traveling down the highway, the paratrooper display was taking place. And so we, as we were going down the highway, we saw hundreds and hundreds of Canadian paratroopers and some Allied forces paratroopers ascend upon the same as the paratroopers did on the night before, on June 5th in 1944. And it was one of the most spectacular things that, and we also had a member, the son of one of the paratroopers that jumped on June the 5th. He was with us on that night, so he got to see exactly what his father did on the night before D-Day. And he stayed behind and actually walked the track that his father showed him that he did, where he landed and how he made his way to the beach.
Goodness me.
It's pretty spectacular.
It's amazing the types of personal experiences you can have, planned or unplanned when you make a trip like this. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed in your video, I wanted just to raise for people, was your bricks, a memory of bricks, and that's on the side of the building there. But I just wanted to show this here. So in 2016, on the 100th anniversary of Beaumont Hamel. Now my dad wasn't at Beaumont Hamel; he's a Korean veteran. But so our group collected a donation, and there's a brick there similar to this one on the side of the build, on the side where they're displayed, and we also have this here that sits in here in my office. So it's a lot of memories there. Memories were made by a lot of other people for us, and that being the veterans and the soldiers. Alex, what's your knowledge about how many veterans from D-Day are still with us?
Oh, goodness. So just for some context, I guess, with regards to D-Day, it depends on who you're talking about, of course. You can talk about the Juno Beach. There were approximately 21,000 soldiers landed. About 14,000 of those were Canadian. So about 2/3. So you got 14,000 Canadians landing on Juno Beach on D-Day, and then you've got about 500 paratroopers with the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion further to the east, landing, as you said, on the night of 5/6 June. So you got about 14,500 Canadians. Now, that doesn't include the Air Force or the Navy contributions, which are also substantial. I'm really not sure how many of those veterans are left. It's kind of difficult to narrow down. Overall, for the Canadians in the Second World War, we had 1.1 million people served, men and women, Air Force, Navy, Army. And then, of course, I'm not quite sure if actually Newfoundland is included in those figures, because, of course, Newfoundland is a mix of some of them served with the RCAF, some of them served with the Royal Canadian Navy, maybe some of them even served with the Royal Canadian or the Canadian Army, but a lot of them also served with the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy and in the British Army, essentially. But 1.1 million Canadians served. As of, I believe it was early 2019, so this is March, Veterans Affairs figures for Second World War veterans were just above 30,000 left. And when you consider we lost 45,000 Canadians in the war, generally, fatalities, it's amazing to think that out of 1.1 million, we have only 30,000 left. Now, since then, a lot has changed. That's almost 2 years ago now. I think we're down closer to 25,000 or even lower, maybe closer to 20,000. So we're really running through the last of our veterans. I mean, the veterans who remain were either very, very young or are just very special in that they're, over 100 years old now. 97 is kind of, if you're 97 now, I guess, 76 years ago, you were what is that, like 19 in 1944? And so, they're becoming a rare breed, and it's sad to see. I mean, we have a Legacy of Honor video program that we started up for the 70th anniversary, or 75th anniversary, I should say. And actually, I'll share my screen again quickly, just to show everybody. It's on our website, junobeach.org/Legacy of Honor. And there's a number of veterans, almost 20 veterans who were interviewed, and you'll go through and you'll see a number of them are no longer with us. And it's a very sad thing to see. Haviland Chasson, who landed with the North Shore New Brunswick Regiment at Juno Beach, is no longer with us. Hugh Buckley as well, who served with the Sherbrooke Fusiliers, is no longer with us. Harry Hardy, who didn't serve on D-Day, but was a Typhoon pilot, a fighter bomber pilot later in the Battle of Normandy. He passed away last year, and there are others here as well. And I'm not going to be surprised when later this year we have to update this, losing these veterans. And so we don't have very much time left to gather their stories and to honor their service while they are still here. And our job is to do the best we can to do those things, to make sure that we and future generations never forget.
Yeah, it was amazing. As I said before, our group last year or in 2019 just happened to be staying at the same hotel. It was actually like a resort, and all of the veterans from Veterans Affairs that were sponsored by Veterans Affairs to be there were also staying at this location, and it was just amazing to be able to sit down in the lobby. And luckily we didn't have to worry about social distancing and that. We got to be able to talk very closely with them and hear the stories. And I have, so many of them recorded and that kind of stuff as well. So, because knowingly, most of them probably would never get back there again. And some very just amazing stories that these gentlemen had to tell, and having that recorded, and what you're doing with the Juno Beach Center and your association and keeping that alive is so important to Canada and to future generations to know what took place and the sacrifices that took place that day for us to be able to talk as we are today, for instance. So and we have to thank them, whether it's on November the 11th or whatever day that any individual veteran group has designated to be a day of remembrance. So
yeah, it's exciting for us that June 6th, that D-Day has become increasingly in the last decade or so a marked upon occasion. Kind of ever since maybe even as far back as the 60th anniversary, it's become increasingly marked, and we think that's really important. I mean, Remembrance Day is never going to go away. It's a really important day, but it does have its roots in the First World War and Armistice Day, right? There was a debate, after the Second World War between veterans groups and others, like, should we change Remembrance Day? Should it be a different day? But the Second World War is kind of more difficult to pin down. Like, when did it actually end? Well, the war in Europe ends, in May. The war in the East in Japan, ends in August. So, what do you choose, right? And increasingly in Canada, it seems that D-Day is becoming kind of the go-to remembrance type day when it comes to the Second World War in Canada, and that thrills us because you hate to pick one day and one battle, but at the same time, it's an entry point into the rest of the war and understanding what else Canada did and Canadians did to help secure victory.
yeah, I know the one of the disappointing parts for 2020 is not being able to mark the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Holland.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think VDay they call it, and whatever plans were made for that particular time. And it's disappointing in the fact that, I guess, if it didn't take place, that's fine. But I know there would have been, again, a whole number of veterans who were still capable of being able to go and have that one last opportunity to march or be taken down the streets of Amsterdam. And unfortunately, the pandemic has taken that particular event away. Well, I don't see it happening in 2021 either. So again, 2022 will probably be a date that, and hopefully, there will be veterans in good health to be able to be there to mark that day as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a number of veterans who expressed, frustration and disappointment at not being able to return to the Netherlands kind of one last time, right? Because that's, I think, how a lot of them are looking at things, is like, this is the last opportunity I'll have. And hopefully they're able to be with us and to go to the Netherlands in 2022 if the event, VE Day 75+2, occurs then. it would be a thrill to see them back there again, and to be thanked, both by Canadians and by the Dutch, who are ever so grateful for the role the Canadians played in securing their freedom. So
Actually, I back in 1996, I had an opportunity. I was actually worked in the Atlanta Olympics, and had the pleasure of meeting Prince. He was Prince Willem at that time, now King Willem, and he came and he sat with the Canadians, and the Dutch and Canadians sat in the closing ceremony, and his seat was there and mine was right there, and we had a great conversation, and he drew the connection between the Canadian forces and the Dutch. So just another one of those experiences to have.
absolutely.
So is there any other information? Is there a website that you would like to share with anyone who would like to donate to the center and help with your ongoing operation?
Yeah, there is. So junobeach.org is our website, and if you go to junobeach.org/donate, you'll see some of the options there. You might have noticed this flag here that I've had sitting over my shoulder. We have a relatively new program. One of the things we had to do with COVID is, our bricks are a great program that you identified earlier, and we still, operate that program. But oftentimes, people get inspired to purchase a brick and make a donation because they visited the museum. And we quickly realized, well, not very many Canadians are going to be visiting the museum in the next year or so.
Yeah.
And so we tried to think about ways that we could bring a piece of Juno Beach to Canadians, as opposed to us sending a brick to France, which we still do. But this new flag sponsorship program is one way we do that. And so these flags are available, not necessarily in the display case I have here, for a $500 donation. And each flag comes with its own certificate of authenticity that identifies the dates or date that it flew. And actually, I'll share my screen one last time. We just did a big kind of promotion of this program for Flag Day. Canadian Flag Day took place on the 15th on Monday. And one of the things we did is we tried to start sending some of our extra flags that we have to D-Day veterans and other veterans of the Second World War. I don't know can you see that on your screen there, Mr. Cameron? That's Bill Cameron, who is a naval veteran on D-Day. He served aboard HMCS Kitchener, which was actually stationed off Omaha Beach, supporting the American landings. And so we sent him one of these flags just a week or so ago. And we did a big promotion around this program. If you go to our website now, you'll see basically we sent flags as well to various parts of the Canadian Armed Forces. So one actually flew or was present aboard HMCS Harry DeWolf, which is one of Canada's newest warships. When they put to sea last week, one flew last week with the Canadian Forces Snowbirds, for instance. And we also have one that's not on here that actually went to the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. And so we've had a really great response from that. But people, if they're interested in getting a flag, they can go to junobeach.org/donate. Just scroll down to our flag sponsorship program, hit sponsor a flag, and then there's a form you can fill out on here, and it's with your credit card information and everything like that, and it's secure, and we'll get a flag to you relatively shortly, because we actually managed to get about 50 flags sent to us just at the start of January. So we have a bunch in stock here in Canada already, ready to be shipped, to your home. So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity to share that.
So these are flags flown at the center. Is that where
Sorry.
These are flags that you have flown at the Juno Beach Center.
Correct. They have flown out front. We have a series of flag poles near the parking lot, which has there's about, I believe, 11 flags on those poles, and that's the Allied nations that participated in the D-Day landings.
Yeah.
And so we have one flagpole there for the Canadian flag, and we also have two other poles on site, one of which is actually pictured in the certificate there, where we can also fly flags. And so that's one of the ways that we're trying to reach out to Canadians and ask for their support.
Excellent. Well, Alex, thank you very much for joining the chat today. Extremely interesting. I hope if anyone has any questions or anything, they will get in touch with you. And hopefully, you know, if they can make a donation during these difficult times, that they can do that as well. So again, it's been a pleasure having you on and just providing this very, very important information and giving honor to our heroes of Canada. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on, and I wish you and your company all the best as you wade through the pandemic, and we hope to see you back in France as soon as possible.
Sounds great. So thank you everyone for joining in this afternoon. And again, if you have any questions, this will be up on my YouTube channel later on, and all of the email addresses and web pages will be there as well. So everyone stay safe wherever you're located, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.